AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Joining us once again, Ross Stadheim with MJSB Employment Justice. We are here to talk. There is a plethora of laws that have just been passed involving employment justice and employment law. And Ross is here to come talk a little bit about them, which is got to be difficult for you. First of all, Ross, good to have you with us again.
Thanks, Matt. Awesome to be here again.
This has got to be, for you, for any law firm that deals with employment law, this is to a point almost nightmarish, because you have got bill after bill after bill coming down where there's impacts to your direct field of expertise, which almost means like you have to go back to law school every time some of this stuff is passed.
Right. I mean, it's nightmarish, but it's also really exciting because, these are very exciting laws that are going to provide workers in the state of Minnesota more rights, not less more rights, but more rights. So it's nightmarish because these laws, they've been recently passed just, a couple of weeks ago in the case of the Minnesota Paid Family and Medical Leave Law just last week. So, us as lawyers, we're still trying to wrap our heads around, what these laws mean and what it entails, who's covered, certain contingencies, that sort of thing. So it's an exciting time, but I would say it's exciting, not nightmarish.
Well, it's a lot of work for you guys.
Correct.
And especially for lawyers. You guys have already done your lawyer stuff. And now imagine it's another full book of new laws that you have to go revisit. And some that have been undone in that as well, that you have to kind of forget that doesn't work like that anymore. Let's talk with those things. You had mentioned when we get in, there are really two bills here when it comes to people getting time off from work, correct?
Yeah, generally speaking, there's two major laws that have been passed this last session. Mm-hmm.
All right. And the big one is the paid family leave?
Yeah, the Minnesota Paid Family and Medical Leave Law. That's the biggest and most expansive one, I would say. Mm-hmm.
And what exactly, from what you're reading on that, from the best thing for most people out there, how is that going to apply to them?
So a lot of folks have heard about FMLA. FMLA is a federal law that covers larger employers with over 50 employees, and it's unpaid. This is now covers Minnesota employees, and what Minnesota, and we're the 12th state to enact a version of this paid family and medical leave law. And essentially what happens is Minnesotans will be able to take 12 weeks per year for their serious medical condition or the serious medical condition of a loved one, and up to 12 weeks of family leave. So, for instance, the birth of a child, 12 weeks of bonding time. But if you use both in 1 year, it's 20 weeks max. So, for instance, if you take 12 weeks because, your dad has cancer or something like that, and then there's a birth of the child in the same year, then it's 12 plus 8, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And this is obviously a huge change for a lot of people out there. When does this, first of all, go into effect?
It goes in the Paid Family and Medical Leave statute law that was passed goes into effect on January 1st of 2026.
Okay, 2026. So it is a little bit of ways away, but it's obviously a larger program, so it's going to be obviously take time to get set up.
Correct. Yep.
So it applies to all workers, regardless of what their circumstances are?
Essentially applies to all workers. There are some contingencies and things like that we as lawyers are still, trying to wrap our heads around, seasonal workers, independent contractors, that sort of thing. But there's really no threshold for the size of the employer that is, exempt from this. If you employ somebody, just one person, or even if you're self-employed, you're entitled to protection under this Paid Family and Medical Leave Act law.
One of the first things, a conservative friend of mine said this to me, and I thought this was interesting. He said, I'm actually for all this because I have two parents who I'm having to deal with, and I've burned off all my vacation from the last 3 years just dealing with them. And they're all for this. So what for them, just for everyone out there, I have a sick parent. I walk into my boss's office and say, I need to take time off. They have to kind of let you go and do that, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they can, ask you for documentation if you have, a serious health condition. If the condition is foreseeable, there's a notice period. You have to provide like 30 days advance notice. So there are things like that we as lawyers are still trying to wrap our heads around. But essentially, yes.
And when you're talking about family, it's obviously mom, dad, having a kid, that's all there. parents, I imagine, are involved there. What is the other realm there? It's like, like if an aunt and uncle, is that fall within the parameters?
Under the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act law, I do not believe so.
Okay, so there are some limitations to what you can do, but it does give you that basic coverage if you're taking care of a parent or, as you said, birth of a child, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to put a hypothetical out there, and you may not know this yet. Okay,
I probably don't yet.
But so say I'm a worker here, and I've asked off for a week of vacation on August 1st, and all of a sudden tomorrow I need to take 6 weeks off because I've got a family member, I got a parent who's really sick. I got to get them set up in a senior care facility. A lot of stuff you have to do, move them, all that good stuff. You got to take care of all that. Can your boss come back to you? Do you know if the boss can come back to you and say, well, you know what, you had a vacation plan, but we're not going to give you that vacation now. I need you back in the office. What kind of ripple effects can this do? I mean, because I just want people to make sure they understand that there are going to be certain parameters here. And is it a case where your boss can come back and say, well, your vacation is now canceled because I need you back in the office?
Well, not vacation, no, because vacation is a benefit that the employer gives to the employee. There's no law in Minnesota or federally that covers that, an employer must give, X amount of vacation time. But if somebody asked for, time off under the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act in Minnesota, and then you're like, well, you're asking for this time off, we're going to take away your vacation. There's anti-retaliation provisions in this statute that provide against that, or protect, against that type of behavior. So in my view, as an employment lawyer, taking away somebody's vacation for simply asking for some medical leave would be retaliation.
Well, and I hate to bring it up, but there are some real spiteful people out there. And I can see something like that exact scenario coming up, saying, well, I had a boss one time look at me and say, if you've got a family member who's on their deathbed, if you haven't already said their goodwills, don't ask me for time off to go do this. I'm like, wow, can I chuck grandma out of the car at 50 miles an hour when I'm done, when she's gone? That sort of thing. There are people out there that look at this stuff and are going to be, and as we've heard, there are some people who are pretty, a little upset about this bill getting passed. Business owners, particularly, they can't. It is passed. It's going to go into effect. They can't just retaliate for retaliation's sake.
That's correct. And to your point, Matt, I really think business owners should be, somewhat excited about this, because when a employee is looking for a job, benefits are a consideration. So smaller employers are going to be able to provide this benefit to their employees, akin to a larger employer. So it is going to level the playing field a little bit if an employee is deciding which way to go. Can I work for a small business? Can I afford it? Also, that brings up the question of funding. Small business owners like myself and, the owner of this fine station, of course, it's a little bit nerve-wracking as small business owners. Are we going to be able to afford this in this type of economy? But I mean, it's going to work like unemployment. So everybody's going to pay into a fund, and it's going to be funded by a 0.07% payroll tax. That's 0.07%, not 7%. And it's going to be paid into a fund. And that fund is going to be shared by the employee and the employer. And it's going to be split up to 50-50%. So it's a little like hole-in-one insurance if you're a golfer, right? So at the beginning of the season, the golfer pays, $100 to his or her respective golf course in case they get a hole-in-one. And if they do get that hole-in-one, then they can have a party and share drinks with everybody without footing the bill for $4,000. So it's a little bit like unemployment in that sort of respect, where everybody shares the burden. And there is special exemptions for smaller employers that are under 30 folks. They're going to have reduced tax benefits and reduced burdens.
When you look at it once again, and the paid family leave, the sick and safe time, that's a different bill.
Correct.
All right. And how does that one, first of all, what's the realm that covers?
Right. So sick and safe leave is a little bit different. It doesn't really cover, well, it can cover, there's a little bit of overlap here. So we're still trying to wrap our heads around it, of course. But for instance, if like having the flu is not a serious medical condition that would be covered by the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, or if it's unsafe to drive, into work because of a huge snowstorm, that's safe time that wouldn't be covered, of course, by paid family and medical leave. So it's a little bit more expansive in that respect, and that's what that covers. And how the Minnesota Sick and Safe Leave Act would work is for every hour that you work in Minnesota, every 30 hours that you worked, you accrue 1 hour of sick and safe leave, up to 48 hours per year.
It's interesting. I just saw a story that they said that there was 60% of all food poisoning cases are tracked back to sick employees, and that's the case. We have some industries where some things have gotten better. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so I remember it's like, yeah, the kid, you're back here to work on Friday, that sort of thing. And that was the mentality. We've gotten better at this stuff, but we still have some industries where I think part of the reason they were fighting so much on that one was they just traditionally, we don't care, get in here and work. That's the only thing they care about. This kind of does set up a safe zone, a bit of a safe zone for people to be able to, God forbid, if they are sick, to take the time off.
Right, exactly. It's like, if you are sick and you do have influenza, don't show up to work, because you have this sick and safe time available to you, where you don't just have to, suck it up and infect your other coworkers.
Yeah, or infect the food or like that, per se. So these basically, although they're two separate plans, they work in tandem with each other and really, you said there, you told me there's 12 states that have this. Do 12 states have this quite level of protection? I mean, this really seems pretty amazing that we've gotten this now and it's going into effect.
Yeah, it is quite amazing. The 12 states that do have that I'm referring to is with regard to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act statute. I'm not really sure about the sick and safe leave laws. There's a lot of states and actual cities that have sick and safe leave time, including Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington, and Duluth. There they have their own city ordinances for folks that work within those city borders. But it is pretty amazing. I mean, the United States is one of the only, developed world nations that doesn't have a national paid family medical leave act.
Well, it's I'm glad we're here. And frankly, I got to believe this is going to make Minnesota a bit of a boon of a place to come work. Because all these people are saying, well, the people are going to move their business out to Fargo. Well, I can tell you where all the people in Fargo are working Moorhead. They're all going to be looking for jobs in Minnesota because the benefits are going to be much better over there than they are going to be in Fargo.
Totally. And it's one of those things where, like I said, the burden is going to be pretty minimal on employers. And if you are a small employer, you are going to have relief. It's not going to be the same burden as a large employer. And larger employers who already have more expansive programs like, your Targets or your United Health Group or something like that, if your program is already more expansive, this really doesn't affect you. You can still offer that private program as long as it's equal to or better than the Minnesota state program.
Of course, Ross Stadheim is joining us right now, MJSB, Employment Justice. These two bills alone, and when I say nightmare, you can tell what I think about school. All right. It's like these two bills alone are keeping you guys hopping. There's other ones coming through. Yesterday when they passed the marijuana bill, they signed that into law. I was looking at the law place. There's a lot of other bills that are coming through that are going to have direct impacts to the employers and employees and how they can operate within the daily basis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the marijuana bill, now it's going to be a legal product. So Minnesota has a statute on the books that says you can't fire somebody for using a legal product, a lawful consumable. So that's going to affect
August 1st.
That, of course.
August 1st, everyone. August 1st. Yeah, but that's when it becomes legal. But on top of that, too, I got to imagine there's going to be uniqueness to. I was looking at it, the marijuana bill is a jobs bill. Growers, distributors, stores, delivery services. I imagine there's going to be a tremendous amount of new laws that are going to apply to each one of these specific businesses, which are going to have, one of the things I know you guys do, you guys have to familiarize yourself not just with business, but specific businesses and how specific businesses operate, because sometimes these laws are become very specific to an individual business.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the marijuana bill and its effect on employment, as far as, as far as in many other areas, it's going to be a work in progress to, get up to speed on that. It's exciting stuff though. Like I said, Matt, it's one of those things that it seems like Minnesota is, in my opinion, on the right path to, offering more protections to workers, not less, and, expanding our rights to do what we want to do as citizens.
It is protecting the people. And, that's the key there. It's protecting the people. Of all the other bills that passing, is there anyone other ones that kind of, tweet you a little bit saying, yeah, we got to spend some time on this?
Gosh, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this one, but there's also a ban on non-competes as well. So that's another one that I really haven't had time to dive into, but essentially into the actual language of the bill. But that's another one that was passed, and it's going to protect workers that say, banning non-competes, saying, one of those things like, hey, after your termination, you can't work, within 100 miles in the same sort of industry. That's huge for workers.
Well, and it was I work in media. That's what those are common things. Now, no one would want to hire me after if I left here, so I'm good here. I'm perfect. He's stuck with me. I'm not leaving. I'm like a tick that's embedded. But when you see it applied away from like media and celebrity into stuff like sandwich delivery services, in fast food restaurants. I mean, the ones that they had, was it Jimmy John's and Sbarro had these things. That's all you're doing is hurting people. You're basically trying to get them into a job and telling them you can't ever leave.
Right. That's ridiculous. There was a case out there that we talked about a number of months ago with the Jimmy John's, where they lost in, some sort of class action, where it's like, no, your non-competes banning folks from working in the food service industry, within, 50 miles is ridiculous. You can't, tie somebody to a sandwich shop, like it's, the medieval times.
You're a serf.
A serf. That's what I was looking for. A serf.
The agrarian society law from the 1700s, I don't think should be applying today. I imagine this is difficult too, because as good as some of these bills are written, there's stuff that the courts are going to have to weigh in on, because just to clarify, correct? Is that usually how it goes?
Absolutely. There's going to be tons of, situations that arise, like the hypothetical that you gave me. Is this worker covered? Is this family member covered? Does this amount to retaliation? How do you and it's going to be case specific, and those cases get appealed to the Minnesota Supreme Court, and then they decide, exactly what this little line in the statute means, because it's always going to be up for interpretation. That's what they're there for.
I don't even think, because I mean, even the most strident people that are against this, I think from what we discussed, I mean, primarily with the paid family and leave, and then the sick safe time, I there's just too many people that when that gets down the road, it's going to be poison for people to even think about trying to rescind this, because it's going to be so popular. Because the reality is especially with our aging population, all of us have parents that are older. This is just something that, the fact that that's going to help so many people. I think it will be a real boon, and people no one will be wanting to admit, though, I was against that. You know what I mean? It will be like fans of New Kids on the Block. Oh yeah, they sold a ton of millions of albums. They sold millions of albums, but you're now saying that you didn't have one. Yeah, right. No, it is going to be one of those cases where this is going to end up being so popular. I think it's going to be no one will ever try to stop this from being in place again.
I hope you're right. Of course, there's always going to be those naysayers, but I think they'll be speaking to a brick wall mostly when they're, talking to society in general.
Ross Stadheim, once again, MJSB Employment Justice. If people have questions, I mean, once again, these are laws that are coming into play in years from now, but they still have to go in. If people do have questions about anything involving employment law, they should get in touch with you. How do they do that?
Yep. Yeah. So they can call our office. They can go to www.mjsbjustice.com and contact one of our 5 attorneys. And we are happy to always provide free consultation. The Minnesota Sick and Safe Leave Law, that does go into effect January 1, 2024. Okay. So I want to clarify that. The Paid Family and Medical Leave Law goes into effect January 1, 2026.
All right. So the sick safe time, once again, January upcoming here, and then but the paid family, that's going to be 2026. Keep that in mind. MJSBjustice.com. If you have a question, give them a call. They're more than happy to sit down with you and talk it out. By all means, Ross. By all means, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Matt. It was great to be on here again.
It's great to have you here as well.